Hello guys, nice to see you back. In the previous video, we covered a topic named promise. This is the second part of the same topic. In this video, we are going to learn promise all method. We use promise to check a condition. Either our promise will be resolved, else it will be rejected. If our function resolved, for the further work, we use then function. And if our function is rejected, then we use catch function to show our error message. Suppose we have such a situation, we have lots of similar promises. And if we use then or catch function for all the promises, then our code will become very lengthy. And to solve this problem, a new function has been introduced in JavaScript ES6 version, promise all. We can check every promise at once with this function. In our case, we have 3 promises. And also you can check thousands of promises at once. As you know, every promise has a result. May be resolved, may be reject. If our promise is resolved, then we use then function. But you need to remember one thing. If all of the promises are resolved, only that time you can use then function. If any of the promise return reject, then it call our catch function. Let me explain you once again. If we have multiple promises, then we can check at once using promise.all function. If all of our promise resolved, then it run our then function. And if any of promise reject, then it call check function. Let me show you the syntax. How can we write promise.all function? Suppose we have a promise named P1. And inside the promise you can see I create a function. And inside the function I print a message in our console, promise1. And I'm going to solve this promise. So I call resolve function and print a message 1. Similarly, I create another promise named P2. And inside the console log, I print our message is promise2. And also I resolve this promise and send message 2. And now I want to check this promise at once. For that, we can use our promise all function. When we use .all function, inside the round braces, we can use array and we can pass multiple promises. Something like that. Inside the square braces P1, P2. If we have 50 promises, following the same method we can check all the promises. Just use comma and type promise name. There is an advantage to using it. We have to call then and catch function for once. We don't need to use both of the function multiple times. And inside the then and catch function, we can type our different codes. And I will give you the practical demonstration. And it's time to back to my Visual Studio Code Editor. So finally I'm back to my Visual Studio Code Editor. You can see side by side I open my Visual Studio Code Editor and I open my browser using Live Server extension. First I'm going to type our script tag. Then inside this script tag I'm going to create our first promise. Let P1 equal to new promise. Inside the round braces I'm going to create an arrow function. As you know, our promise always return a result. Either is resolve, either is reject. For resolve, I'm going to take a variable named resolve. And for reject, I'm going to take variable reject. You can type any name. Inside this function, I'm going to use setTimeout function. And inside the setTimeout function, I'm going to create arrow function. And I'm going to hold our code for we are going to use multiple promises. And their timings are different. And I want to run our first promise after once again. So I type 1 multiplied by 1000. So when I call this message, it prints something in our console. So I'm going to type console.log. Inside the round braces, the first promise has resolved. And then I'm going to call our resolve function. I assume that our function always resolved. And I want to send a numeric value in our resolve function. So I type 5. So this is our first promise. Similarly, I'm going to create another promise. So I select the code and duplicate it. And our promise name is P2. And also I'm going to print in our console, the second promise has resolved. And our resolve function, I'm going to send 10 as value. And I want to delay this promise for 3 seconds. Similarly, I'm going to create another promise. So I select the promise and duplicate it. and our promise name is P3. Console.log, I'm going to send a message. The third promise has resolved. And in my resolve function, I'm going to pass 30 as value. And I want to delay this promise for 5 seconds. Now I want to check all the promise at once. So I'm going to use promise.all method. So I'm going to type promise.all inside the round braces. If you want to check multiple promises, then you need to use array. So inside the square braces, first I type P1, P2, P3. This method going to check all the promises one by one. Then I'm going to use then function for resolve. And also I'm going to use catch function for reject. Dot catch. If any of one of these three promise is rejected, then it run catch function automatically. And remember, then and catch is our callback functions. And inside the then function, I'm going to create an arrow function named result. Inside the curly braces, you can see here that each function has sent one result in our resolve function. 5, 10, 30, and I want to print all of 3 at once. Console.log, inside the round braces, I'm going to use template string method. Inside the backticks, results, $, inside the square braces, result. So it's print the value of result, which we get from resolve function. Similarly, I'm going to create another arrow function inside our catch function. And our function name is error. And inside the console, it's going to print error message. So basically I create 3 different promises. And every time I print a message in our console. And every promise send different value in resolve function. As you can see, 5, 10 and 30. Let's save the file. And if I show you my console, you can see first it print, first promise has resolved. Then after 2 seconds, it print our second message. And after 5 seconds, it print our third message. At the end, we get our result as an array from. And if you want to calculate our results value, yes, you can. Inside my then function, we need to use for in loop. So inside the then function, but first we need to set a variable var total equal to 0. Then inside the then function, for inside the round braces var I in result, I want to addition all the values and save the value in our total variable. So I type total plus equal to result. Our result is an array. So inside the square braces, we need to define our item I. Also I want to show the result. So I duplicate this console line and inside the backticks, I type total and inside the curly braces, I'm going to pass total variable value. And now I'm going to save this file. And you can see it print our promise messages. And at last it print our total value. If all the functions are running well, then our promise all method call then function. If any of method return reject, then our promise all function return catch function. So I'm going to reject one of the promise. In our case, promise 3. I comment out the result function and I'm going to call reject function and print message reject. And if I save this file, you can see in my console, it print the first promise has resolved. Then it print the second promise has resolved. For our third promise, it print the third promise has reject. And our promise all method run catch function. Error reject. Our then function did not work here. And I'm going to show you another example. You can see these 3 promises are very similar type of promise. So we can make it smaller. So I'm going to delete these 2 promises. And I'm going to create a new promise here. And I'm going to convert this promise into a function. First I create a promise. Then inside the promise I'm going to call a common function. And our function name is proCall. And inside the function I'm going to pass 2 parameters. For resolved value, I'm going to pass a numeric parameter. And for our console.log message, I'm going to pass string parameter first. So this is our first promise. Similarly, I'm going to create two other promise, P2 and P3. And I also change our message. For result, I'm going to pass 15. And for our console message, I'm going to pass second. Similarly, for promise 3, result value is 20. And our console value is third. But first we need to create a function named proCall. Now I want to make our setTimeout a function, not a promise. So I remove the code and type let proCall equal to function. And inside the function, our first parameter is return data and our second parameter is message. Inside the return data, we are going to pass 10, 15, 20. And inside the message variable, we are going to pass first, second, third. You can type any name. And now I am going to use this parameter in our console. So console.log, inside the console.log, I'm going to make it dynamic. Inside the backticks, the dollar curly braces, inside the curly braces, our message. And if our promise is resolved, it send return data as value. And I want to change setTimeout function dynamically. So I'm going to send return data value into 100. So first time it delay for 1 second, then it delay for 1.5 seconds, and our third promise is delay for 2 seconds. We know every promise function returns something, either resolve or reject. But we do not create any basic function which is going to return resolve or reject. So I'm going to cut this setTimeout function and I'm going to create a basic function and I'm going to send two parameters, resolve and reject. And inside the curly braces, I'm going to paste our setTimeout function. It's an anonymous function. It's going to return promise. So when we call proCall function, it's return the anonymous function. So we need to type return keyword for this. It's basically a function which we call in our promise function. So it's a promise. So it's going to return resolve or reject. And then it show our dynamic message, setTimeout. And we don't need to change anything. So I'm going to save the file. And you can see in my console, it dynamically print our messages. And if you want to change resolve value, yes, you can. Let's change it. Our first value is 20, and our second value is 40, and our third value is 60. If I save this code, our first promise is delay for 2 seconds, and next one is delay for 4 seconds. And after 6 seconds, it print our third promise, and then it print our total, 120. And now I'm going to create another promise, which is going to return reject value. So I duplicate this line and change the name P4. And inside this promise, I'm going to create an anonymous function, and it takes two arguments, resolve and reject. And this time I want to call reject function. And inside the reject function, I'm going to pass a message. The fourth promise has rejected. So when I save the code, our promise all method going to call catch function. Let's save the code and see what happened. But before save the code, we need to call this promise in our promise all function, P3, P4. And if I save this code, you can see in my console, first it print the error, the fourth promise has rejected, then it execute our promise one by one. And there is no total value in our console because our promise all method return catch function. So I hope you understand what is promise all method. And now you know why and how we use promise method. Thanks for watching this video. See you in the next tutorial.